Welcome to today's story. In a secret lab, a bunch of alive people are frozen by a doctor. The plan is to keep them in this state for a week and calculate if they age. Unfortunately, during the procedure, the device malfunctions, and the people are left to freeze for an indefinite time. 20 years later, two of them finally regain consciousness, but they are unaware that the outside world has changed completely. Following this, we are taken to the year 1999 and introduced to the protagonist, Gomiran, a beautiful and lively young girl. She is trying to find a decent job to support her family, which consists of her parents and her differently abled younger brother, Namtae. One morning, Miran gets a phone call informing her that she has been rejected from the job interview she recently attended. Sad, she sits to have breakfast with her family when suddenly the phone rings again. Miran gets a surprise invitation to attend a variety experiment show which is being directed by a handsome rich man, Madong Chan. Madong wishes he was handsome. In the following scene, despite her unwillingness, Miran visits the show and participates in some dangerous experiments just so that she can get enough money for her family. She is made to fly in the air, pull a truck, and risk her life in other experiments. As expected, Dong Chan is impressed by her boldness, so he praises her performance. Later, he wins the most popular TV show award for his variety experiment, and while receiving it, he introduces his girlfriend, Ha Young, to everyone. She is a news reporter, and it seems like she and Dong Chan have been together for a long time. After the massive success, Dong Chan plans to take his variety show to another level. He wants to conduct a freezing cryonics experiment in which a living human is frozen and put in cryosleep for 24 hours. However, the only catch is that he wants to extend the time limit and store the human body for a long time. Dong Chan believes that if they succeed, they can cure different diseases in the future. He also wishes to broadcast the whole experiment and is looking for a female participant. Following this, Dong Chan sends his assistant, Hyung-hee, to meet Miran and persuade her to participate in the experiment alongside him. He also talks to his girlfriend and asks her permission to let him participate. Though she refuses at first, Dong Chan does not stop pleading with her until she finally agrees. Next, he meets Miran at a restaurant and tells her about the whole experiment. He even promises her a lot of cash, but Miran walks away from there, saying the experiment is very dangerous. Afterward, Miran goes to a fortune teller and asks to reveal her future. The latter says that she will meet her boyfriend after 20 years, and the climate around her will be very cold. Sounds like it's time to hibernate. On the other hand, Dong Chan can be seen trying to persuade his boss to let him do the experiment and broadcast it on their channel. At first, his boss, Hong Suk, refuses his proposal, but later, when Dong Chan tells him that he can be popular in a short time because of the show, he immediately agrees. Later, Dong Chan approaches Miran and personally requests her to accompany him in the cryogenic experiment. He also assures her that if she agrees, he will bring the autographs of his brother's favorite artists and pay her a huge amount. This finally convinces Miran, and she agrees to volunteer for the experiment. Later at night, the two are inside the freezing capsule, and Dong Chan's assistant, Hyung-hee, is filming the whole process in the laboratory. We notice Professor Huang keeping a close eye on the experiment. He is the one who invented the procedure, but he hasn't revealed how to reverse it. After a while, when the procedure is about to be complete, Professor Huang enters the lab and urges Hyung-hee and the others to leave the place. Instead, he calls the student Jibyum and asks him to look after the volunteers while he goes out to finish some important work. As soon as Huang leaves the laboratory in his car, we see a mysterious man following him. Later, Huang's car explodes and flips in the middle of the road. In the next scene, the time of the cryogenic experiment comes to an end, but Jibyum has no idea how to stop it. Panicked, he turns off the power of the whole laboratory, causing the capsules of all 6 volunteers, including Dong Chan and Miran, to disappear. The following day, the police force and other representatives start searching for the missing people all over the town. Seeing this, the boss, Hong Suk, calls Hyung-hee to his office and asks him not to tell anyone about the experiment. He also orders that all the evidence regarding it be destroyed immediately. Later, he also meets Dong Chan's girlfriend, Ha Young, and tells her the same thing. She tries to revolt, but when Hong Suk offers her the position of the main anchor on the 9 o'clock news, she agrees. Ha Young immediately gets to work and reports the breaking news where several people went missing. The news shocks many people across the country, including Namtae, as he was very close to his sister. He starts remembering all the beautiful moments he spent with Miran. On the other hand, after the news broadcast ends, Ha Young sits alone in the studio and reminisces about her first meeting with Dong Chan. She breaks down in tears and regrets taking up the offer. Right then, we are shown a secret room where Professor Huang is sleeping on a bed, and it looks like he is still alive and someone is looking after him. Slowly, time passes by, and both Miran and Dong Chan's family start getting on with their lives. But one day, Miran's parents receive a letter from an anonymous sender saying that their daughter is safe, but they need to keep it a secret for their safety. However, they simply think someone is joking with them. A few months later, when their business fails, the family moves out of the city. Meanwhile, Miran's friends have graduated and gotten new jobs, but they still miss her. The scene then fast forwards by 20 years to 2019, when Hong Suk has become the CEO of the media company, and Hyunki is handling the variety experiments show. Nam Tae has also grown up, and Dong Chan's former assistant, Ha Young, is one of the lead anchors of the Newsline TV channel. Meanwhile, Jibyum, who is attending an international conference, gets a notification on his iPad about a warning from the laboratory. Immediately, he turns on the cameras and notices that Professor Huang has regained consciousness and is out of his bed. Without wasting any time, he leaves the conference and heads straight to the laboratory. At the moment, Huang is trying his best to alter the experiment that he started 20 years ago. So he opens the capsules of both Miran and Dongchan and injects them with something. As soon as he does so, Huang falls to the ground, while Miran and Dongchan regain consciousness one by one. Both of them head out of the laboratory before Jibyum arrives. Miran walks towards her house, whereas Dongchan makes his way towards the studio where he used to work. Unfortunately, the latter's body cannot withstand the high temperatures of the surroundings, so he passes out in the middle of the road. Later, Dongchan is brought to a hospital, and the doctors are surprised to see him in extremely normal condition except for the fact that his body temperature is much lower than that of a normal human being. Soon, Dongchan wakes up and asks the doctor to inform Hyunhee about his presence. Having no idea about what he is saying, the doctor calls the number Dong provided him and asks Hyunhee if he knows someone by the name of Dongchan. As soon as Hyunhee hears the name, he becomes shocked and rushes to the other room away from his juniors. Meanwhile, Dong scolds him for not recording the entire experiment and leaving him alone in the laboratory. It turns out that he has no idea that he has woken up after 20 years. Somehow, Dong Chan's family also gets information about him being at the hospital. When they arrive there and see him alive and well, they start fainting one after another. Meanwhile, Hyunhee calls Hong Suk and informs him that Dong Chan is back and that their careers are in danger. The revelation shocks the cunning CEO, so he quickly rushes to his office without informing anyone. On the other hand, Miran reaches her house and finds it all empty. This makes her assume that her parents have been chased away after being unable to pay the house rent. Hence, she goes to the police station and shows her identity. As expected, the officers are shocked to see her young face not matching the age on her ID card. After a while, Miran borrows the telephone and makes a call to her mother. When she does not pick up, she is compelled to leave a voice message for her mother. In the next scene, Miran's mother finally gets the voice message and rushes to the police station to get her daughter. Unfortunately, Miran has already left, and she is now at her university. Startled by the modern gadgets that the students are using, elsewhere Hyunhee and Hong Suk arrive at the hospital. As soon as they see Dong Chan, they start crying. It's been 20 years since they've seen Dong. However, our protagonist does not recognize them and starts wondering why everyone is looking so old. He then walks out of the hospital room and notices a board revealing that the current year is 2019. Similarly, Miran also walks around the university and finds out that the year is 2019. We are then shown side-by-side scenes of both characters, who are left in utter disbelief after finding out that they have been asleep for 20 years. Next, Miran's family finally finds her at the university, and they engage in an emotional reunion. Miran is then taken to her new lavish family house, where her mother informs her that she founded a company with the funds Miran gave her before she was frozen in the experiment. With their business's earnings, they are now living a better life. Miran has been away for a long time, but it turns out that her family has prepared a separate room for her, making her emotional. In the next scene, Dong Chan also returns home with his family. Despite being extremely rich before the cryogenic experiment, the family now operates a basic restaurant and lives in a much smaller house than before. Dong Chan discovers that his younger brother is now married and has a daughter. Not only that, he also learns that his father passed away years ago, making him upset. Elsewhere, Hyunhee and Hong Suk are concerned that Dong Chan's return would jeopardize their careers by revealing information about the experiment that they have been hiding from others. The following day, Dong Chan returns to the laboratory to learn what actually happened to him and the other volunteers during the experiment. There he meets Jibyum and finds out that at the very end of the experiment, someone tried to murder Professor Huang 20 years ago. Although he survived, his team faked his death to protect him from other impending risks. He regained consciousness a few days ago and resurrected Dong Chan and Miran from their sleep. But soon after, he again passed out, and now he is in intensive care. Hearing all of this, Dong Chan deduces that the perpetrator who attacked Professor Huang is connected to his cryonics experiment. Following this, Dong Chan invites Ha Young to meet him at a cafe. After she arrives, he is taken aback to see her old face and apologizes for not being able to keep up with his promise. Despite this, Ha Young forgives him and mentions that she is happy to see him alive. Later, she starts crying and walks away from there, but not before telling Dong Chan that she will call him later. Meanwhile, Jibyum keeps an eye on a dolphin that was previously part of the experiment and finds that it has died due to hypothermia. He then speculates that Dong Chan and Miran will suffer the same fate if they continue staying in normal conditions. Jibyum talks to one of his colleagues and mentions that the only person who can save them is Professor Huang. But sadly, he is still unconscious. Nonetheless, he immediately calls Dong Chan and tells him to maintain his body temperature not higher than 33 degrees Celsius. Next, an enraged Miran arrives at the studio, confronts Dong Chan, and holds him accountable for her loss of 20 years. She is very upset to have lost such a huge chunk of her life sleeping in a capsule. So to compensate for this, she demands that the program director pay her an amount. However, Dong Chan informs her that he too is a victim of the experiment and is unable to help her. Following this, Miran visits her previous university and declares that she wants to continue her studies. One day, her boyfriend from 20 years back, Bung Sim, who is now an instructor at the same university, notices her. Miran, however, does not recognize him and walks past him. Meanwhile, while Dong Chan comes to the studio and informs Hong Suk that he wants to resume his career as a program director. As expected, the cunning CEO stops him right away and tries to divert the topic because he is afraid that Dong Chan might expose their secret. Nonetheless, Hong Suk appoints him as a junior-level director and allows him to join the studio. As soon as he gets appointed, Dong Chan scolds Young Ki for his lack of control over the employees. Later, he is approached by Ha Young, who tells him that she is free during the weekend and wants to meet him. Dong Chan, who couldn't even nap for 20 years, immediately accepts the proposal. Later at night, Miran returns home and opens her brother's laptop to check her emails. To her surprise, she finds emails from her best friends from 20 years ago. It turns out that her mother lied to them, saying that Miran moved to the US to continue her studies. The next day, Miran sits to have dinner with her family, and her parents suggest she not work hard to find a job. They assure her that the family's financial condition is not like before and that they can afford everything now. Later, Miran attends her class at the university, and coincidentally, the subject teacher is none other than Bung Sim. She does not recognize him, but as soon as Bung Sim notices her in his class, he gets nervous and starts shivering. Meanwhile, Dong Chan joins the Variety Experiments group in the media company, but he gets ill-treated by an employee named Park on his first day. Park makes fun of his appearance and tells him that he is too good to learn directing and work for the program. Right then, Hyunki arrives there and notices the two arguing. He immediately pulls Park away, scolds him, and then apologizes to Dong Chan for his subordinate's behavior. Despite this, Dong Chan scolds Young Ki and belittles him for not being able to teach some manners to his juniors. Sometime later, the whole team sits for a meeting to discuss ideas for their upcoming show. When it's Dong Chan's turn, he presents some of his ideas, but they are all primitive and uninteresting. As a result, he doesn't get any response from the others. Later, Young Ki receives a call from Miran asking him to meet her and take care of her memorandum. Hearing this, Hyunki immediately heads to Hong Suk's office and reminds him of the situation. On the other hand, Professor Huang regains consciousness yet again, but sadly, he has lost his memory. Jibyum tries his best to help him back to normalcy. When none of his methods work, he takes the professor to the laboratory and makes him look at the freezing capsules he designed earlier. However, the old man simply keeps staring at the capsules. The following day, Miran visits the studio and meets with Dong Chan, Hyung-hee, and Hong Suk. Wasting no time, she blames them for wasting 20 years of her youth and asks for compensation according to the rate she was paid for 24 hours of the experiment. Hyung-hee and Hong Suk calculate the amount and figure out that it is over 35 billion yen. The cunning CEO quickly refuses the compensation, saying that Miran is still young and alive. In the next scene, Miran's best friends are surprised to get a reply email from her and immediately contact her. Soon, they meet at a restaurant and are shocked to see Miran young and beautiful like in her youth. They touch her skin and ask her about its secret. As Miran is forbidden to disclose the experiment, she tells her friends that she used some good cosmetic products in the US. On the other hand, Dong Chan goes on a date with Ha Young and compliments that she looks beautiful even after 20 years. While they are conversing, he opens his mobile phone and reads a recent article on himself questioning his disappearance and the possibility of him being engaged in a cryonics experiment. Miran's friends also see the news and suspect that she is hiding something from them. Elsewhere, Dong Chan's mother gets enraged at the news and prepares to head to the broadcasting company's office to scold the director. However, as she is about to leave, her granddaughter stops her, saying that her uncle becoming famous can be a good thing for their family business. Afterward, Dong Chan visits the laboratory and meets Jibyum. During their meeting, the latter shows him the cryonic capsules, which still have some volunteers captured inside. Jibyum also reveals that after the experiment, his normal body temperature is 31 degrees Celsius, and the critical temperature is 33 degrees Celsius. Later, Dong Chan meets a detective who investigated Professor Huang's murder attempt and gets information about the prime suspect in the case. While explaining about his condition to the detective, Dong Chan learns that the general public has no idea about the experiment they conducted 20 years ago. The scene then shifts to Lee Suk-do, the CEO of a powerful company named the Unsung Group. He orders his subordinate to do a background check on Dong Chan and also investigate Professor Huang. If the latter is alive, he has to be killed immediately. Surprisingly, Lee looks exactly like a man who is still trapped in one of the cryonics experiment capsules. In the final scene, Dong Chan returns to the office and confronts Hyunki for not trying to search for him and informing the authorities after he disappeared. In response, Hyung-hee tries to defend himself by stating that he was influenced by Hong Suk and that his hands were tied. Right then, Miran also arrives there, looking for Dong Chan, and requests him to find a job for her at the same broadcasting station. The episode ends as Ha-yeon looks at the two with regret in her eyes. She has started to realize that she made a big mistake by not informing the authorities earlier. The episode begins with Dong Chan storming into Hyun's office and criticizing her for doing nothing after he suddenly disappeared. She responds that she couldn't have done anything and mentions that despite his sudden disappearance, she never stopped expecting to hear from him. She also reveals that she has been waiting for him for the past 20 years and is still single. In the following scene, Dong Chang, Hyun Kai, and Hong Suk discuss Marin's compensation demands and whether hiring her is a smart idea to solve the dilemma. Dong Chan tells them that they have no other choice but to let her do what she wants. After the meeting, Dong Chan approaches her and offers her a 3-month internship in the Variety Experiments show. Hearing this, Marin discloses that her major goal is to become a variety show director and make new shows. Dong Chan appreciates her confidence and changes the subject to their body temperature, asking her if she is feeling something weird with her body. In reply, Marin tells him that she is feeling hot lately and needs to stay cool all the time. After this, Dong Chan urges her to keep her body temperature at 31.5 degrees or else she will have to face a lot of problems. Meanwhile, Marin's parents are concerned about her health and decide to meet Dong Chan's family to learn more about the matter. They assume that since Dong Chan was frozen in the experiment alongside Marin, he also must have been facing cold body temperature problems. Next, when Dong Chan drives out of his house, he becomes aware that he is being followed by 2 mysterious guys in a van. Cleverly, he stops his car in front of them and inquires about the reason for following him. The men pretend to be delivery guys and refuse to follow Dong Chan. Here we get to know that they are actually hired by the mystery man, Lee Seok-do. Later, Dong Chan arrives at the laboratory and meets Guy Bam. He then tells Jibum that keeping H-Wing at the laboratory is dangerous, as some people are looking for him. Soon later, Marin's parents arrive at Dong Chan's family restaurant and meet with his family members. At first, when Marin's mother tells them that she knew about Marin and Dong Chang being alive for the last 20 years, Dongju quickly gets enraged and mentions that they should have informed them of the experiment. She also blames her family's misery on them. Seeing this, Marin's father makes it clear that they are there not to fight but to find out the problems of their children. Right then, Dong Chan arrives there with the mentally ill Professor H1 and introduces him to everyone. At the university, Byung Sim gets the shock of his life when he discovers that he's been teaching his college love, Myrin, this whole time. Meanwhile, his wife, Young Sun, talks to Kaeon about her husband and worries about how he would react if he meets Marin at school. On the other hand, Marin's and Dong Chan's parents are trapped with the professor and finally agree to take care of H-Wing until he gains back consciousness. In the following scene, Dong Chan approaches Hong Suk and confronts him for not looking after him and revealing the experiment in public. Hearing this, Hong Suk claims he had no option but to listen to the CEO. However, as a means of keeping him quiet, Hong Suk promises Dong Chan to provide him with compensation and his car. After getting the car from Hong Suk, Dong Chan arrives at Marin's school and has no idea that he is still being followed by the same 2 guys. Later, he meets Marin and gives her a new smartphone and also asks her if her pitches for the Variety Experiments show as an intern are ready. Suddenly, Marin's best friends, Young Sun and Kanye, arrive there and are happy to meet handsome Dong Chan. Right then, Dong Chan gets a call from the detective informing him that he has failed to find any information about the guys who followed him earlier. Moving on to the next scene, the stalkers continue to pursue Dong Chan. When he meets Ha-young, she invites him to dinner, but Dong Chan kindly declines, stating that he needs to spend some time with his family. Afterward, while Dong Chan is returning home, he meets Marin and confirms her internship. He also informs her that Professor H. Huang is spending the night at her house. Hearing this, Marin requests Dong Chan to tell her more about how it happened. Dong Chan replies to her that he will explain everything on their way to the parking lot. Next, when Dong Chan is about to start his car, the stalkers approach him from behind and point a knife at him. Following this, they kidnap Dong Chan and Marin and place them inside a frozen food truck, unbeknownst to the fact that they are immune to cold temperatures. After some time driving, the 2 guys decide to stop the truck in a remote area and check on the hostages. To their surprise, Dong Chan and Marin are perfectly fine and they manage to outwit their captors and flee. Following this, Marin and Dong Chan continue to walk, and after walking for some miles, Marin's body temperature rises, and she faints. Dong Chan then carries her on his back and rushes to the nearest highway. There he stops a car and takes Myrn to the nearest hospital. As soon as they reach the hospital, Dong Chan instructs the doctors to reduce Marin's temperature. Right then he receives a call from Ha-young, asking him to join her for the live broadcast. In the next scene, Don Chan appears on the news alongside Ha-young, and instead of hiding the fact about the cryonics experiment, he reveals to the public that he is the first person to survive a cryonics experiment. He also mentions that the broadcasting media company had no idea about the experiment he conducted in 1999, he is the one responsible for it. Don Chan also mentions that he awoke after 20 years but is suffering from a side effect, hypothermia, in which the patients must maintain their body temperature of 31.5 degrees. We also discover via a flashback that Professor H. Wang is the only one who can create the antidote to assist them out of their situation. Meanwhile, key political players throughout the world are reacting to the news and planning about recruiting Don Chan as their party member. On the other hand, Jibum is also interviewed, and he admits that he is the one who resuscitated Don Chan. To his bad luck, Lee Sok-do is looking at his interview, and he tells his assistant that they need to get rid of Jibum to make sure that the person who looks like him remains in the capsule forever. The following day, when Don Chan is about to leave his house to go to the office, he gets to know that his family is utilizing his appearance on TV to advertise their restaurant and to increase their sales. At first, he becomes angry at his mother, but when she tells him that she started the restaurant with the aim to feed him when he returns, he becomes emotional and hugs her. In the morning, the scene shifts to Ji-hoon, the boy who likes Marin and seems to be interested in her. Here, it is revealed that he is none other than Byung-sim's son. Later, Ji-hoon and his friend Yoongjun arrive in class and sit beside Marin. When they discover that Marin is doing her internship in the media company, Yoongjun asks her if she likes the variety show's director. Don Chan, hearing this, she instantly responds that he's not her type, much to Ji-hoon's delight. Meanwhile, when Hyun-kai and Hong-suk continue lamenting their lives, Don Chan arrives there and chastises Hyun-kai for always being at Kim's office instead of working. After sending Hyun-kai away, Don Chan returns to his cabin and on his way, gets confronted by Ha-young. Ha-young asks him why he is ignoring her, and in reply, Don Chan tells her that he is trying his best to protect her and also mentions that he does not want to talk more about the matter. Next, Don Chan meets Marin in the meeting room and presents her with her ID card, officially initiating her new internship. All of a sudden, he checks Marin's body temperature, gives her a biometric watch, and a package containing an injection to reduce her body temperature. The scene then shifts to the university where Byung-sim follows Marin and ultimately reveals to Myrn that he is the one she loved during her youth. He tells her that he wishes he could go back in time and be with her, but sadly, she rejects him and furiously urges him to go away. He, on the other hand, does not take no for an answer and forces himself on her, prompting her to tackle him to the ground and beat him up. As Marin attacked the university professor Byung-sim, she is arrested and taken to the police station. She, however, manages to call Dong Chan and he arrives there to pick her up. After completing the paperwork, he chastises her for her behavior with her university professor. Defending herself, Myrn reveals that the professor is none other than Byung-sim, who betrayed her in the past and tried to force himself on her. As soon as Dong Chan hears this, he appreciates Myrn for her actions and starts fighting with Byung-sim. Meanwhile, Professor H. Wang is working at Don Chan's family restaurant when Liziak and his associate arrive there to have a meal. Suddenly, when H. Wang sees Liziak, he recalls him being preserved in a capsule and runs away from there. On the other hand, while Young Sun is with Kanye at a cafe, she receives a call from Rusun, informing her that his father misbehaved with a girl at the university and got beaten by her. Sometime later, Marin also walks out of her workplace and joins her friends, explaining to them how she attacked a professor who tried to flirt with her. Hearing this, Young Sun deduces that Byung-sim misbehaved with Myrn and walks away from there without telling anything to Marin. After she leaves, Kanye reveals to Marin that after she went missing 20 years ago, Kanye married Byung-sim and also has a son. Later at night, the angry Young Sun can be seen waiting for Byung-sim to arrive home. Soon, when Byung-sim tries to enter the house, Young Sun attacks him and throws him out of the house. Having nowhere to go, Byung-sim visits Kanye and requests her to help him get back with Marin, his true love. Kanye gets shocked after hearing this and wonders how Young Sun spent 20 years with him. In the following scene, Dong Chan and Hyun-kai are at a bar where Hyun-kai expresses his frustration for being ill-treated by Don Chan at their workplace. At the same time, the news channel mentions that there must be other people alongside Don Chan who participated in the cryonics experiment. Hearing this, Don Chan immediately calls Marin and suggests she stop telling everyone about the experiment. The following day, Hyun receives a proposal to write a story for her news about another lady participating in the experiment. Rather than accepting the news, Ha-young dismisses it and suggests her co-worker find some other story. She then immediately goes to meet Dong Chan and informs him about the proposal. She tells him that she wants to start a new relationship with him because they never got to conclude their love story. While the two are talking, Marin suddenly arrives there, and after seeing them conversing, feels surprised. After Myrn goes away, Dong-chan replies to Ha-young, stating that he does not want to get back with her and is still angry at her for not doing anything to search for him when he got lost. The scene then shifts to the moment after Myrn walked out from Dong-chan and Myrn's meeting room. Wondering whether Ha-young had been waiting for Dong-chan all along, she then starts crying, mentioning that she didn't have a lover back then and is still single at present. On the other hand, Young-sun informs her son Ji-hoon that she is considering divorcing Byung-sim after learning that he fell asleep at Kanye's house. Ji-hoon appreciates her decision and assures her that he would be there for her no matter what she decides. In the following scene, when Jibum is about to drive his car, he receives a phone call from his colleague requesting him to go back to their office and get some important papers. Unfortunately, as soon as Jibum exits his car, it explodes into flames, much to his dismay. Next, Marin returns to the office and runs into Dong-chan. He grabs her hand and warns her to keep her heart rate and body temperature in control. He also informs her that he loves one of her project ideas and mentions that they should start working on it soon. Here, Young-sun reveals that she has always admired Byung-sim and will continue to do so even if he doesn't love her. She also tells Marin that she used to like Byung-sim even before he fell in love with Myrn during their college days and married him when she got pregnant after getting intimate at the graduation party. Afterward, Jibum calls Dong-chan and informs him about his car explosion. Together, the two discuss and try to find out the person who could be responsible for the attempted murder. The scene then shifts to Lee Se-aktu, who points a revolver at the hitman for failing to kill Jibum. He then makes it clear to his assistant that at any cost, the person lying in the capsule should not come back to life. In the next scene, the channel's previous president arrives at the station and talks with Hong Suk. He invites him to join his new national party and tells him to utilize Dong-chan's popularity to advance his political career. Hong Suk also agrees to this and immediately takes a picture with Dong-chan. Later, Dong-chan approaches Hyun and requests her to cover a story about Jibum being attacked and receiving death threats. Surprisingly, she agrees to cover the news and promises to protect him. However, Dong-chan rejects her again, telling her that rather than protecting him, she needs to help him protect Marin. During the work meeting, Dong-chan presents Myrn's ideas to everyone, which involves transporting some 40-year-olds back in time by recreating their 20s. Everyone seems to love the idea and they decide to start working on it. After completing their work at the office, Myrn, Dong-chan, and their co-workers end up going to a club and enjoying their time by eating and drinking. Soon, they also get engaged in karaoke, during which Dong-chan performs a love ballad, remembering his time with Ha-young. Later, Dong-chan drops Marin at her house and meets her brother Nam-tae. Seeing him, Dong-chan recalls the reason why Myrn did the experiment in the first place. Following this, Dong-chan arrives at his home and gets to know that his house is going to be confiscated by the bank for not being able to clear the debt in time. Hearing this, he tries to comfort his siblings and assures them that he will take care of everything. The next day, Dong-chan and Marin set out to find the ideal location for filming their new program. Unfortunately, they get lost in the forest, and as the sun rises, their body temperature also starts rising. At the same time, Marin realizes that she has forgotten her temperature control injection and falls to the ground. Having no other choice, Dong-chan injects her with his injection but loses consciousness in the process. Sometime later, Marin gains back her consciousness and starts crying, thinking that Dong-chan is dead. Fortunately, it starts raining, and Dong-chan's body temperature begins to cool down to normal. As soon as Dong-chan comes back to life, she kisses him and collapses in his arms. The episode ends with Dong-chan still surprised, holding Myrn in his arms.